Hi, welcome to China Insight. Today we're talking about new media in China, the digitalization of media in a country whose people, like in many countries around the world, are increasingly getting their news online and on their phones. How does this impact China? How does this impact Chinese people? To find out, we went to Shanghai, where publications are adapting to and in many ways taking advantage of new media. And to help me dissect this topic, I'm joined by Professor Wang from Beijing University's School of Journalism and Media Studies. Right? So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
So when I was a student, new media was just one option I could choose, but I think it's far more important for every journalism student now. Is that right?
Yeah, right, quite right. Most of the students use new media to check materials in the university and also even read news, anything they can find in the social media and by internet too. So, yeah, they have to use them.
They have to use it. So is it fair to say that they don't really read newspapers anymore?
In the university, yes, I should say, definitely. Most of the students read from internet.
Well, do people read newspapers anymore? There's a publication in Shanghai which is suggesting that they do. It's Shanghai Metro newspaper. Let's take a look. In a world filled with tablets, smartphones and laptops, getting information the old-fashioned way is fast becoming obsolete. If traditional media is to survive, it needs to adapt to readers who want information quickly and conveniently. Nowhere are these demands more evident than in Shanghai, a modern and exhilarating metropolis. But with 24 million people, there's a huge number of potential readers. That's if you know how to get to them. It's 8:30 in the morning and I'm here in People's Square subway station in Shanghai. This is one of the busiest interchanges in Shanghai. This is probably one of the busiest times to be here. I'm with staff of Metro magazine who are handing out the latest issue to what's clearly a huge number of potential readers. The magazine only goes out on this day at this time in this way, but it's enough because every Friday morning around 30,000 of these goes out. And let's face it, if it's free, then why not take one? The papers run from the offices of the Shanghai United Media Group, and today the team are running through this week's layout. Metro Shanghai is a weekly tabloid focusing on lifestyle and entertainment. It offers everything from celebrity news to restaurant reviews. The woman in charge is chief editor Tang Ning. Having worked in the newspaper industry for over 30 years, she's seen Shanghai's media landscape totally transform.
文革前，新民晚报是在圆明园路的一幢小楼里办公。文革之后，这幢小楼被别人占用了，所以我们就曾经在九江路的一个文物仓库里面办公，只有4层楼1层。 电脑房是没有电脑房，是签字房，是一个一个签字做出来的，也是在九江路41号，然后之后就造了这个延安路的80年代后期造了延安路839号的新民晚报大楼，现在这个大楼还在。然后这里是我们90年代初搬进来，也是新民晚报最辉煌的时候，我们发行量达到了180万份。从我个人来说呢，从做记者。 投身记者的时候呢，是有蛮有职业的自豪感的。就那个时候，因为报纸也少，媒体机构很少，上海只有3报2台，但是现在像上海电视台就有6个频道，对吧？那么报纸也有那么多张，报刊杂志加起来得有100份左右。那这个就稀释了很多我们的这种。 感觉吧，应该是，但是我觉得这个也是时代的发展造成的。现在的资讯发达程度跟那个时候也是不能比的。
富帅，然后呢，伊原来最早辰光登了纽斯队。
这张报纸呢是4年前创办的，当时的文汇新民联合报业集团也是从报业发展的战略考虑，做了这样要进入一个地铁渠道，让 现在已经很少读报或者根本不读报的年轻人呢，拿到一张这样免费报纸，也是我们从宣传阵地上来考虑做一个延伸和拓展。
While we might think that handing out free newspapers is a way to preserve traditional media, Tang Ning believes we should see this as something different, something new.
因为它跟传统的靠发行有一部分是靠发行收入的这样的一种媒体，靠人家去订阅的，去邮局每天定时定点跟你传送，这个还是有区别。它是一种针对特定群体来进行，其实是一种强行的咨询输入。
一个就是载体出现，或者角色出现。
看到这是一个下雨天，所以我也看了，觉得很震惊。这个。
And giving information is not just about the newspaper. Tang Ning regularly holds events that allow the Metro audience to listen to lectures by famous writers, directors, and TV hosts. But free Metro newspapers is in no way a new idea. The concept first started in Stockholm in 1995. Since then, issues of Metro have spread to over 150 cities across Europe, North and South America, and Asia, making it the biggest international newspaper in the world. They distribute it in busy transportation hubs and target a young, active readership. Shanghai, as China's biggest city, the commercial capital, and arguably China's most cosmopolitan city, would seem a perfect fit. And access to the world's biggest international newspaper is just another step towards achieving world city status. Regardless of the huge appeal of Metro newspaper, it's come under attack for its tabloidization of the news. But with digital media becoming more and more pervasive, it's papers like this one that could ensure the survival of the printed word.
How do you feel about this changing media, and how do you think it's going to affect the future of media in China?
我想，现在大家都在说新媒体，给我们做报纸的人、编辑记者也带来了一定的困扰。但是随着这波一波的浪潮过来以后，我们可以2年以后再来讨论这个话题。我想报纸可能会渐渐地成为一种精准定位的一种有特定受众的，还是会存在。特别是有些报纸可能会变成奢侈品。
So here I have a copy of the Shanghai Metro newspaper. Now, how do you think a paper like this really succeeds and does well?
Yeah, I think first it's free.
Okay,
you have to say that people can get it whenever they want it, if they're in a subway. And also another thing is that something is really for entertainment, amusement. That means the content is really for people to relax. And when you take a subway, when it's sometimes crowded or not crowded, you take something not so serious, it's okay.
It sounds like you're saying a paper like this will only really work in the subway.
Doesn't mean like that. In the internet, you can find for other searching engines, for example, like Baidu in China, you can find a lot of things for entertainment. And we know that Postman, who writes a book, is about amusement to death. That's all things about people to think and to relax and to enjoy. It's something for people to.
So that would suggest that it's not, of course it's not specific to China. All around the world people love tabloid newspapers. They love reading about lifestyle and gossip.
For relax when they want.
Say people are no longer reading newspapers that much anymore, which is true, and they would prefer to read news on their phones and on their laptops. Is that a problem? Or is it okay? Or do you think it's even good that people are finding new ways to read news?
I think it's good. Because more channels people can have, and that's good for people to get more information to know. But of course that can be a problem if people all the time for their leisure time to just poking on a phone and then they open their eyesight only inside of the phones, but not to look at the landscape of the whole world or the society. That's a problem. But to getting news, it's good.
So in your research, have you uncovered statistics as to how many people are reading traditional newspapers?
The research is done for 2012, not for this year. But anyhow, it shows something that's very interesting. The generation from the 80s to 90s, they really get their news from the social medias or internet or whatever. But the old generations, they would like more to read newspapers. So you see that new media, though it is there, but some of the older generations, maybe they don't like to read it.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at publications who've made the shift to digital media. Welcome back to China Insight, and today we're talking about new media in China, and I'm joined by Professor Wang from Peking University School of Journalism and Communications. Thanks for joining us here.
Thank you.
I want to know, with technology today, it's like anyone can be a journalist.
Yeah.
Do you think that's good or bad for the news?
I think it's both bad and good. It's just have the coins of the two sides. It's good because everybody can participate in sending their ideas, opinions, or whatever they find to the internet or social medias. This is good. But on the other side, that we lose the doorkeeper for checking what's the good, what's the bad, or from ethically talking about the journalism. Sometimes we really need somebody or some of the government or officials to control about that.
Well, over in Shanghai, there's 2 publications who've made the shift to new media, and because of that, they're able to have more participation between themselves, the content producers, and between their readers, the consumers of the news. Let's take a look. On January 1st, 2014, the Shanghai United Media Group launched its first online publication. Now, traditionally we view media as reporting on the government for the people, but what's interesting about the Shanghai Observer is that it has stories on people, politics, economics, but its target audience is actually government officials. So I want to find out how an online media platform is uniquely suited for reaching this audience. And to do this, I'm visiting the Shanghai Observer's office. As a new publication, it's run only by 10 journalists. 7 handle the content, while 3 run the website. It's headed by Zhang Wei, who after working with the Shanghai Observer can now never be without his phone. He showed us how the site is run.
那刚才的开机画面就是我们可能今后广告收入的一个比较大的来源，就是可以通过打开页面的卖给赞助商或者广告商。然后这就是上海观察的页面，这是头条，这是下面的文章，然后这是我们的一些栏目。然后这是一个用户中心注册登录，然后如果你点开一篇文章的话，用户行为都可以在这里产生。上面可以写评论、收藏、分享，你也可以调整字号。
And why is it important that the publication be available as a mobile application?
我是非常愿意做新媒体。为什么？我觉得新媒体它提供了一个传统媒体所无法提供的一个瓶颈，它的可以突破是什么呢？就是传统媒体你写篇文章，你不知道谁在看。不知道有多少人在看，也不知道他们对你这篇文章有什么意见，更不知道他们希望你还写出什么文章。但是新媒体的话，它可以通过用户的反馈、评论，包括后台的数据，谁在点击多少，哪篇文章点击的多，哪篇文章点击的少，那这个是传统媒体无法做到的。那所以说我刚刚做新媒体是有段时间，我是非常喜欢每天就看这后台这个数据，我觉得非常有意思。当你自己想的一篇文章、一篇标题上去以后，这个点击量飙升的时候，我觉得这个成就感是传统媒体所无法带给你的。
Head of Shanghai Observer is Gao Yuan. As a fledgling publication, the responsibility of its success rests largely on him.
来源要28岁以下跟当时上行运行。那么其实我们这个筹备呢，已经是筹备了，从去年的6月份就开始筹备。
很多人都说新媒体项目是一个起来也很快、死的也很快的一个项目。那么我们还是希望能够这个项目能够比较持久的、比较长期的、可持续的发展。如果把上海观察打造成就是你想了解上海的政治经济的一些深层次的动向，那么你就看上海观察。
The Shanghai Observer belongs to what was formerly the Jiefeng newspaper group, run by the Shanghai government. The new publication is intended to both increase readership and perform a public service.
我想我们上海观察来说，就是我们首先是反映民意的，反映基本的这个社会的民意，而且我们是能够，这是一个比较新的一个渠道，是通过一个新媒体的一个载体，而且我们是希望能够更多的反映大众的意见。然后的话，我们也希望能够通过这个来进一步的影响政府的这个政策的这个制定。我们现在今年的计划就是到今年年底的话是到20万份左右，我们现在是在14万份左右，那么超过14万。那么读者的数量来对我们来说呢，我们觉得并不是我们追求的一个唯一的目标，我们更希望就是通过这么一个新媒体的项目的建立，然后我们逐步的推动我们自身的这个体制机制的转型。
Over at the Oriental Morning Post, journalists are also striving to make a difference. But the Oriental uses both traditional and new media platforms.
This is the page of our Weibo, Green Politics. Yeah, this is our logo.
Yun Hao is responsible for running their page on Weibo, the massive Chinese Twitter-like blog, and WeChat, the mobile messenger much like WhatsApp that also has a news feed.
What's more popular in terms of the number of users of the Weixin platform or the Weibo platform?
Weibo is more interactive, and our articles and photos in Weixin are more delicate, you can say.
Okay.
Because we can just deliver 2 or 3.
So yeah, you're more selective about what goes into Weibo. But you can post almost anything on Weibo, but only some of them are.
Most of the something on Weibo very short.
Okay.
我们在春节的期间，我们律政公署举行了一个叫“家乡去哪儿”的一个活动，在微博和微信上。那么呢，受到了很多的网友的一个反馈，很多图片。然后当时呢，就有一个郑州的一个环保组织的工作人员，在微博上发了一些照片，并且艾特了我们，就引起了我们的关注。然后说是在郑州的一个新镇那边，由于要发展一个新的城区吧，然后就把当地农民的有1000多棵的古枣树，都有几百年了，500、600年甚至上千年的古枣树给砍了。然后当时我们觉得还是应该引起重视的，所以我们就跟进报道了。我们首先是通过微博跟他直接取得联系，然后呢我们再进一步就问到他的电话号码，包括当地一些村民的一些联系方式，我们就直接跟这些最知情的人士取得联系。
我是上海东方早报律政公署的环境记者。是这样子的，我了解到。
然后再派记者去调查，就是大概就几天的时间吧，把事情的一个简单的了解了一下，然后做了一个先的初步的一个报道。我们先是在报纸上和我们这个微博、微信的平台是同一天发出来的，在就当地的那些老百姓啊，包括这个给我们爆料的一些环保人士，当然是非常的一个受到鼓舞了，因为他们觉得他们觉得就有意义的这个事情，需要推动的这些事情，就是能够被媒体重视，对他们也是一种肯定嘛。然后在春节之后，当地的郑州的林业局就在网络上做出了回应，说是开始着手调查此事，并且停止继续砍伐这些古树。
This was just one of several stories that came from a lead on their Weibo page. In this way, the online platform has created a space where those who read and those who provide the news work together, and as a result, finding important news is made a lot easier. Assuming, of course, that you can trust the sources and you do enough fact-checking. But Yun Hao believes having an online platform isn't about taking shortcuts.
其实我倒是有些担心，因为新媒体很多人都以为它是一个追求的是一个速度，那么这个速度很有可能对新闻造成一些伤害，包括一些事实性的东西造成一些伤害。我觉得从我个人来说吧，就是作为一个记者来说，我觉得还是应该更加的冷静一些，不能太浮躁，不能在这个一个信息爆炸的一个新媒体的环境当中失去了方向和底线。
I find so interesting about the Shanghai Observer is that usually in China we think of government having its hand in media or somehow influencing media, which usually happens. But with Shanghai Observer, they're trying to influence the government. They're trying to have media influence the policy making of the government. Now, I think that's interesting. Is that a sign of the media changing in China?
I think so. It's something that from every aspect that you can see that people are using new media, even the government official media. But the problem is that the older generations, they're used to read, and then suddenly changing into new media, they feel uncomfortable.
Obviously, this publication is confident that the government officials are using their phones now to read, because they're targeting government officials and trying to inform the government officials with news that comes on the phone.
Yeah.
So it must say that government officials are also now, or the older generation is also using new media, right?
They have to use it. It's a challenge for them to change from the printed media to the media. But for some time, I think for 3 or 5 years, I think both new media and the traditional printed media will both influence them.
Now, I want to talk a bit about the Oriental Morning Post, because what we see there, I think, is a great example of citizen journalism, or almost citizen journalism, because you have people writing into them saying, I think you should follow this story, as we saw with the red jujube trees being chopped down in Zhengzhou.
Yeah.
So someone wrote in, put a message on their Weibo page saying, you guys should follow up with this, and it became a really big story. Now, do you think this shows how citizen journalism is quite evolved in China?
Yeah, I do think so, and believe it will lead to people to participate more in this civil journalism. It opens the door for people, though lose the door, or in some sense of the doorkeeper, but in some sense open the door for people. Every person can participate in civil journalism in China now.
When the new media platform is so open to everyone, then how do you really distinguish between the rumors and the gossip and the real news stories?
Remember that tsunami happened in Japan, and then
that was 2011.
Yeah, okay, and then the nuclear power plant was destroyed, and then some people, that the rumor said that the people, if you eat salt, because the salt is from the ocean or from the sea, and then the leak of the power of nuclear power plants is something can be something very bad and
contaminates the salt.
Condemn the salt, and people feel very terrible, so horrified that people rush to the shops to buy the salt, and then really make the whole country, not only some provinces, but the whole country, especially around the ocean of the eastern part of the China, and this make the lack of the salt. And then finally, the government funded the person, because many people resend this message in Weibo, and then the government said that we should look for somebody who is the first person to send this. And then finally, they fund that lady, and then sue that person.
Wow. The question I have is, why did so many people believe it? If it wasn't from an official news source, it was just an individual.
I think that's at the very beginning of Weibo, and also has no any regulations at that time. So it's important to have the law or regulations to restrict the social media.
Otherwise, anyone can say anything,
and
thousands, millions of people will share it.
Right.
And it could create panic, as in with the salt.
And also influence the economy, influences the whole society's people's thinking about the safety.
So people often assume it's an impingement of freedom when they make these restrictions. But actually, it's very, very necessary to have the restrictions. Otherwise, these sorts of rumors can happen, right?
Yeah, right. And then that's why that you have to do restrictions, but on the other side, you have to let people to use that.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about new media in China and how it affects everyday life. Welcome back to China Insight. If you're just joining us, we're talking about new media in China today, and I'm joined by Professor Wang from Peking University School of Journalism and Communications. Now, Professor Wang, so here we have a cartoon which is really depicting the challenge that comes up with new technology and the new words that we have in new technology. So we have the daughter saying, "Mom, pass me my phone. I want to knit Weibo." Why did she say, "I want to knit Weibo"?
Because in Chinese, the Weibo means microblog, like a Twitter. And then if you use Weibo in Chinese, that means scarf.
Okay.
So you can knit your scarf in 140 characters.
I see.
And so
okay.
Mama is looking for needles. How interesting.
And she, of course, doesn't understand that there's a new meaning of the word Weibo. It's not the traditional Weibo scarf.
Yeah.
It's Weibo, the social media,
Right.
social networking platform.
Yeah.
So I think we should briefly discuss two of the major players in terms of internet and social media in China, and that's really WeChat and Sina Weibo. Right? I'm sure you use both of them, right?
Yeah, both.
Now, could you briefly explain to those who are not familiar with these, how do you use them?
Okay. Generally, people are using WeChat more than Weibo now, especially about the numbers of 2014. We have more than 400 million registered in WeChat.
And there we can see over 355 million active users.
That's one. 355 million. And you know that in China, relationship is more than other countries. So important in China. We know that the words 关系, that even foreigners know that.
关系 relationships, right?
Yeah. That in China we have very strong relationship or close relationship. And WeChat, like Facebook, like group of people or group of friends and relatives, they can get more close.
And so new media, rather than separating, is actually bringing together the different generations.
Right. Social media, I think, especially helps people to be closer.
That's all the time we have for today's China Insight. If you have any comments and suggestions, please don't hesitate to email us on the address on the screen now. You can also add us on our Weibo and our WeChat pages, which is extremely relevant for today's topic of new media. Thank you so much for joining us today, Professor Wang.
Thank you.
I've been your host, Dan Epstein. Be sure to join us next time on China Insight.